Chapter 8, Pandemic, a Global Crisis.
In the midst of a global crisis, with outbreaks spreading and epidemics threatening every corner of the world, you and your team of elite disease fighters are humanity's last hope. Your mission is daunting. You must collaborate, strategize, and leverage your unique skills to find cures and stop the relentless march of deadly diseases. Every decision counts. Every move matters, as the fate of millions rests in your hands. Together, you must navigate the complexities of the crisis, balancing immediate action with long-term strategy to save the world from disaster. Will your teamwork and resolve be enough to turn the tide? The future of humanity depends on it.
Welcome.
Welcome.
And welcome to Board Game Doctrine.
Bringing theology to the table.
Literally. All right, well, guys, we're here with Pandemic. Brad, there it is. Pandemic. You know, this game is fairly, it's not like old, but I'm pretty sure it was like 2000s, maybe, 2009-ish.
I believe so, yeah.
So, I mean, this game came well before COVID came, and but I remember thinking during COVID, like, wow, what a time to play the game Pandemic.
Yeah, I seem to remember quite a few references to Pandemic, and then also another game that is kind of similar to this, but it's a phone game, and people using it to see like how COVID
will it spread,
would spread, things like that.
Yeah, crazy. But we're here. We're going to talk about Pandemic because it's a fun game, and we were discussing it. I think it's our first truly cooperative game, so that's kind of cool because co-op games are very fun.
I think co-op games are probably my favorite kind of game to play.
Yeah, I do enjoy cooperative games quite a bit. They're fun. So let's talk about the concepts here. The thematic concept, if you can't gather from just the title, is global crisis management. And humanity's resilience. So, you know, these diseases are spreading globally. How are we fighting it? All that. That's the theme of the game, is fighting disease, basically. The mechanical concept, obviously, one is cooperative play. But second is resource management. And we'll get into how to play, but everyone has abilities and things they can do during their turn to help stop the spread of these diseases. So managing what you have in order to win the game.
Yeah.
So before we jump into the how to play and kind of the review of the game, let's talk about how it relates to our faith and theology. So there's a few aspects, I guess, of how this connects. And the first one is compassion. Got to have compassion. It's a good trait to have as a Christian. And it's you can have compassion in this game as well. Faith in action, helping others, that sort of thing. It comes out in this game. This game could be desensitizing to sicknesses and diseases. I don't think it would happen too much, but to where you're not as you don't care as much, I guess. Sort of the opposite of like what compassion is desensitizing. And then limited focus. There's several aspects of this game that you can hyper-focus on and sort of lose sight of the big picture, I guess. And that's something that we want to try to not do. We don't want to lose sight of the big picture, which we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that in our biblical references. So, but first, compassion. Matthew 25:35-40 says, "For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, you came to visit me." And then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothing and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and visit you?" The king will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." So compassion on those less fortunate than us. In this game, that would be people who are sick. Diseases are spreading throughout the whole world, and we're having compassion by going and treating sicknesses, and ultimately, hopefully, curing diseases, and then in the end, eradicating those diseases. Okay, Colossians 3:12. Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. So, clothing ourselves with compassion, it's always a good thing. Having compassion in the game, it's a good thing. All right. Second positive aspect, faith in action. James 2:14 through 17 says, "What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but has no good deeds? Can such faith save them? Suppose a brother or sister is without clothes and daily food. If one of you says to them, 'Go in peace, keep warm and well fed,' but does nothing about their physical needs, what good is it? In the same way, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead."
Yeah. It's like compassion is a great thing to have.
Yeah.
But what good is compassion if it doesn't stir you to do something for that situation?
Yep. Faith in action. John 3:18. Dear children, let us, 1 John 3:18. Dear children, let us not love with words or with speech, but with actions and in truth. So having faith in action to go and do these things that we talk about is a healthy and living faith, I would say. And then desensitization. Proverbs 21:13. Whoever shuts their ears to the cry of the poor will also cry out and not be answered. So, again, this may not happen in such an extreme way, but when we're playing Pandemic and we sort of lose sight of, like, there is actually sicknesses in the world going on. There is actually diseases going on. Proverbs says if we shut our ears to those cries and sort of become desensitized to it, then our cries will not be answered either. And Matthew 24:12 says, because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold. So when wickedness increases, love decreases. So we should not become desensitized to the themes of disease and sickness that Pandemic has, but instead it should actually spur us to become more compassionate and show our faith in action even more. Right?
Yeah, a great topic to bring up in playing games like this that may have instances like people are dying in this game. So what can you do to help these people or maybe their family? Those types of topics would be easy to bring up.
Yeah, definitely easy to bring up. And then limited focus in playing this game. 2 Corinthians 4:18 says, so we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but what is unseen, since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. Colossians 3:2, the same sort of idea. Set your mind on things above, not on earthly things. So limited focus in the game could be you trying to get to certain areas and curing diseases and losing sight of the big picture where, a different move may have been better. But ultimately, I think one way that this limits our focus is we're trying to focus so much on what we're doing to cure diseases and what we're doing to eradicate these things is we're not looking at the big picture and setting our minds on things above, things of heaven, trusting God with those things. Obviously, we should want to have compassion and have our faith in action and go help the poor and help the sick. But we also should not, we should understand that we're not doing that in our strength, but we're actually doing it in God's strength and ultimately for His glory, and it's what He is doing through us. We shouldn't lose sight. We shouldn't limit our focus just on what we're doing and how we're doing things. So those are sort of the biblical references and theological aspects of the game Pandemic. And one other thing, just a slight mention, is this is a cooperative game. So working together, we've brought it up a lot in our little podcast here. Having that community working together to overcome challenges and fellowshipping with each other is really ultimately the joy of board games and how we win board games is through that.
Yeah, and one thing that could be related to the game Pandemic is I know many churches that have a disaster relief team or something of the sort, especially when it comes to like natural disasters, tornadoes roll through, big storms, trees fall down, people will go out. They've already got the tools set aside, a group of people that are dedicated to it, and they'll go and they'll help these people clean up whatever mess that they've got, and that's just what they do. No payment, nothing like that. It's just a group of these Christian people that want to go out and serve.
Yeah, and that's part of faith in action is not necessarily expecting repayment for what you're doing. You're living out your faith and
see the issue, have compassion, but don't leave it at that. Go and be active.
And really, the true payment for your faith in action is being able to share the gospel with those people, and it's a payment for them that Jesus has done. That's what the true payment is for them to understand that, and ultimately, hopefully, that God would draw them to Himself, and that they would believe and repent and turn to Him and be saved. So that's the ultimate payment for what we're doing, and why we should be doing it as well. So that's sort of the theological concepts here. Let's talk about how we play the game. Pandemic it's a big, sort of a big undertaking in a similar way that Wingspan is a big undertaking. We've talked about several small games like Love Letter, Happy Salmon. Not a lot to them, can be played very quickly. But then there's games like Wingspan, Dice Throne, Pandemic that we've talked about already.
A little bigger,
a little bit more complicated. This game it technically says it's for ages 8+. So even though it's more complicated, it's simple concepts, I guess. Just more. There's a lot of concepts within that. So, Brad, why don't you grab that board there and let's sort of see how we play this game. Like I said, you are a team that is trying to. You are. Oh, is this how? Yeah. So you're a team trying to eradicate diseases all over the world, all over the globe, and each of you play a character, and you.
And each one of those has a unique talent,
and each one of them has a unique ability, unique talent, much like our Christian life. Mm-hmm. We each have unique abilities and talents. But there's little cubes that represent the disease in certain cities. You start off with cubes in different cities, and you on your turn you can do some different actions. Some of that action is moving to those cities. Some of it is treating the sickness in those cities, building I forget what they call research center in those cities. So there's several different ways that you can manage your actions to get the job done. And your ultimate goal, obviously, is to treat all the diseases, and then you can cure the diseases. And ultimately, when after you cure the disease and after you get all the cubes off the board, that disease is eradicated. And even if you draw a card with that disease on it, you don't play any more of those cubes. So, do you have the actions right there? It's what actions we can do on our turns? Because after your turn, since it's a cooperative game, it's sort of like the game takes a turn, if you will. So, on your turn, do 4 actions.
Oh yeah, so you've got 4 actions on your turn, and those are what Adrian had said with moving and curing diseases, or maybe making a research station. But then after your turn, you'll draw 2 player cards, and those are going to be different cities and things like that, which you can use with a number of different for a number of different reasons. Like you can discard a card with a city name on it and teleport to that city.
Yep.
Or
and that
if
counts
you're
as one action.
Yeah, and that's one action. Or if you're in that city and have that card, you can discard it and go to anywhere in the world.
Yep. So instead of, each city is connected sort of through the lines on the board, but using that way, you can sort of skip the lines and go straight to the cities. Yep.
And then after you take all your actions and do that, there is a separate deck that you'll draw from that will cause the infections to spread.
Yep. Infection deck.
Yeah. So whatever city you draw from that receives a disease cube of that color.
Yeah. Which there's 4 colors, which means you're fighting 4 diseases: black, blue, yellow, and red.
Yep.
So if you draw whatever Atlanta blue, then you put 3. Atlanta blue is a Statler Brothers song. I don't know why I said Atlanta blue, but you would draw 3. You would put 3 cubes on Atlanta, 3 blue cubes, and that city would be infected with that blue disease. Now, the unfortunate thing is if you draw a city that already has 3 cubes on it, an outbreak occurs. So what that is you would put down a 4th cube, but then you would spread that disease to all adjacent cities.
Oh yeah, well it's not. You don't actually put a cube on it.
Or you don't actually put
no,
a cube on
but
it.
it's just each city that's connected
Each city that's
to it.
connected to it gets a cube of that color. And if one of those cities has 3 cubes already,
Another
it happens
outbreak.
again.
Chain
So
reaction.
yeah, it can get intense pretty quickly. And as you continue to draw cards, you actually increase the infection rate. So I think at the beginning you draw 2 cities to infect, but it can get all the way up to I think 4.
Yeah,
So
there's epidemic cards that are within the deck that you draw from, and whenever you draw one of those cards,
Yep.
things start getting crazy.
Yep. And so it being a cooperative game, it is either all of us win or all of us lose.
Yep.
There's one way you can win, and that is by eradicating all 4 diseases, meaning you've cured it and all the cubes are off the board. So we eradicate all diseases, we win the game. Now, there's several ways you can lose the game. As it is with most cooperative games, the game can win in many different ways. And one of those ways is by if you have more than, I think it is 8 outbreaks. So, like I mentioned, when you have the 3 cubes and you draw that city and you have to outbreak, if you have 8 of those, you lose the game. Mm-hmm. You can also lose the game if you have to place cubes, but you don't have any cubes of that color. So if I have to place 3 blue cubes somewhere, and I have 0 blue cubes,
That's hard to say.
yeah, you lose the game. You can also lose the game if you run out of player cards. So the cards that you draw from every turn, if you run out of those and can't draw anymore, you lose the game. So cooperative games are meant to be a little bit more difficult because obviously it's players, actual humans against a game that can't make decisions on its own, but it's just based on the cards you draw. So it's makes it a little bit more difficult to win. But honestly, in the end, having that fun, even if you lose, like I've lost cooperative games many times, and I swear every time it's by like this much.
Yeah.
It's always
It always
like,
feels like it's just right.
oh, we're so close, and so losing the game can be fun in and of itself in a way, and just be so tight. So that's kind of how you play it. It's obviously a lot more detailed than that, but I feel like if we went into it, we'd have to have a 30-minute video on how to play.
Yeah, it'd be a very, very long video.
Yeah. So family friendliness of this game. Obviously, it's for ages 8 plus. I will say, especially in the light of like COVID and stuff, it can be a bit heavy for the topic.
Yeah.
So
especially if you are someone who may have lost somebody during that time, maybe it's a sensitive thing when you're talking about things of this type.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So it can be heavy, but it doesn't necessarily have to be heavy. It can just be sort of like a fun. Hey, we're trying to cure diseases.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, it is a piece of cardboard with some cubes on it.
Yeah.
So if you want to just look at it as simple as you can, that's what it is.
Yeah. And really, you're trying to eradicate diseases. So you're trying to do the good, right?
Yep.
Which is a good way to look at games like this that sort of can be a little bit heavier on the topic. So I would say it's pretty family friendly, thematically, mechanically. Again, it's a little more complex. If you were, I'm thinking if I was playing with an 8-year-old, I'd probably want to have those actions readily available so we know exactly what we're doing, have the rule book handy to make sure we know exactly what we're doing. So, it probably wouldn't be like this super, every turn wouldn't be super quick where you're just playing. You'd probably want to make sure you're doing everything correctly. But yeah, family friendly, and I don't think there's anything necessarily inappropriate about it, just except for the fact that it's diseases and it's sicknesses.
Yeah.
There are a ton of expansions for this game. I'm just going to read some of them off. But the base game Pandemic has 3 main expansions: On the Brink, In the Lab, and State of Emergency. And those all go with the game and add different mechanics to it. But there's also almost like separate games that are in the same theming, I guess. So there's these hot zones where you can play in just North America.
That's the first one I actually have played.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. The main game is the whole globe. There's hot zone North America. There's hot zone Europe. And then there's standalone games, Rapid Response, which I have not played, so I don't necessarily count. But it looks like it's a little bit shorter of a game. Then there's Pandemic Contagion, which flips it around, and you play as the disease trying to, I guess, eradicate humanity. So
yeah.
That one may be a little bit more heavy than regular Pandemic. Pandemic Find the Cure, which is actually a dice-based version of Pandemic.
Which you wouldn't like, but I would.
Oh, gosh, dice, yeah. No. And then that dice game has an expansion called Experimental Meds. And then there's Pandemic Legacy, which is regular Pandemic is played in one session and then you're done. Pandemic Legacy, you play in like episodes. So, you play this first episode, you'd finish, then you'd come back for a different session and continue that same storyline, sort of.
Yes, it's a story basically,
Yep.
and how things play out in previous games carry over.
Yep. And there's Season 1, Season 2, and then there's a Season 0, like a prelude, I guess. Prequel. And then in the Pandemic game system, so using the same mechanics and theming, there's a Star Wars version of Pandemic, a World of Warcraft version, Pandemic Iberia, which takes place in the mid-19th century Iberia, Rising Tide, which is on the sea, where you're in boats and stuff, which I think would be pretty cool to play.
Might get scurvy.
Yeah. The Fall of Rome, playing in like a Roman Empire, Cthulhu, which, if you know what that is, these scary monsters and demon-type things.
Based on H.P. Lovecraft's writings.
Yep. So there's a Pandemic version of that. So those are all the expansions.
So many.
/ even just other standalone games that you can get with Pandemic. So going back to like the family friendliness, if it was me, I might like to play the Star Wars version just because of the theming of Star Wars. It's a fictional universe, not as real, if you will, as the normal game.
Yeah.
So that would be ways you could take it to be more family friendly and more customized for your family or for your friend group that you play with. So, family bonding. It's a co-op game, so I feel like co-op games help the bonding. All games sort of bond you with the people you're playing with, but co-op games especially, just because there's
fosters that teamwork. Yeah. There may be a multitude of things that you could do on your turn, but maybe someone else that's playing is a little better primed to do that. So you guys can work together and discuss that and kind of problem solve as a team to tackle the board in the way that would be best. Yeah,
like planning in advance. Like, all right, on your turn, you're going to go here, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go to these other places. Yeah.
And planning. Something to avoid there too is like, don't play the game for everybody.
Yeah.
But work as a team.
Like, Which and sometimes I kind of do that in cooperative games. Like I will literally plan everyone's turn for them, and then
Have you considered doing this
yeah.
instead? Yeah,
exactly.
No, that's
So, but allowing the people you're playing with to be able to plan helps the fellowship together and helps them sort of learn these things as well to get together. It's not just you playing the game with two robots sitting there playing what you want to do. So, all right, let's go over some prompts and some questions that we can ask regarding the aspects we talked about: compassion, faith in action, desensitizing, and limited focus. So, compassion first. How does playing Pandemic reflect the biblical value of compassion as seen in passages like Matthew 9:36, where Jesus is moved with compassion for the crowds? So, how does Pandemic allow us to grow our compassion for people?
the object of the game is the whole world is in need. The whole world is suffering from some sort of disease or contagion, and not just one, but multiple.
Mm-hmm.
And you could look at that and it's like, oh, that's sad, but your compassion moves you to go find that cure, do some research, and take those cures to the countries.
Yeah, and you could even expand upon that with the people you're playing with to say, in real life, the world is suffering from a disease.
Yep.
And I'm not talking about COVID.
Nope.
The world is suffering from the disease of self and sin, and we should be moved with compassion to eradicate that, which we can't eradicate it, but we know how we can eradicate that through Jesus. So we should be moved with compassion to really evangelize. You could tie a pandemic into evangelizing and mission work and things like that pretty well, I would say. In what ways can we show compassion towards others, both in the game and in real life, as we work together to save lives and prevent suffering? There's so many ways we can show compassion. In the game, we're trying to heal diseases. In real life, when we're not planning our turns in advance and we're allowing the other person to sort of have planning, that is a way we show compassion to them, allowing them to play the game as well. So there's a lot of ways we could show compassion. So faith in action. How does playing Pandemic demonstrate faith in action, trusting that collective efforts can make a difference, as seen in the story of the Good Samaritan in Luke? So look at the story of the Good Samaritan. That was faith in action because other people just passed him by.
Yeah, and they may have felt bad for the guy,
Yep.
but it was too much of a hassle for them to deal with him.
Yep. And when the Good Samaritan found him, went and got him basically a hotel room, paid for it all, told the innkeeper, hey, whatever he needs, do it, and I'll come pay you back. So having faith in action can involve more than just yourself as well. It can be a group effort. As it is in Pandemic, it is a group effort. And using your unique abilities that you have on your character card in Pandemic shows that.
And it doesn't even have to be something big like what the Samaritan did. It can just be little things. If you see somebody has a need, doesn't have to be a big thing. If you're able to fulfill it, do it.
Yeah.
And don't do it in a self-serving kind of way or I'm so good. Just do it and give liberally where you can.
Yep. What lessons can we learn from the game about perseverance, teamwork, and trusting in God's provision, even in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges? This is, I think, best shown in, and this has happened before, where it just seems like the game is just ridiculously overpowered and you're losing so badly, but then there's just this perseverance, teamwork, something happens and flips it, and then boom, all of a sudden we're coming out on top and beating the game.
Yeah.
So the game can teach you that sort of thing. as long as you stick with it. You can't be like, man, we're losing so bad, let's just call it, we're done.
Yeah.
Perseverance and teamwork, and in real life, trusting in God's provisions, even in the face of insurmountable challenges.
Yep. And another game that does a good job at this, which we may or may not cover, you guys can let us know, because they've got a few different sets now, is the game Horrified, which is a cooperative game. And whenever you first start those games, it's like, there's no way
Yeah.
that we can get all this done. And that type of thing is, and whenever those cooperative games are like that, it feels so good at the end.
Mm-hmm. Especially when you can strategize as a team, and even though you have this giant challenge in front of you, you each doing your own thing gets rid of all that. So
Yeah.
it's good. All right, desensitization. How does playing Pandemic potentially desensitize us to the suffering and loss portrayed in the game? I've said this before, Brad, but if you are getting desensitized to actual humans and actual diseases because you're playing a game, there might be something wrong with you.
There might be.
That's going to be like my new catchphrase for like all
There's
these episodes.
something wrong with you.
There's something wrong with you. How can we maintain empathy and compassion for those who are struggling, both in the game and real life? Yeah, just keep a reminder that this is real stuff sometimes that happens like this. We should have that compassion. What does the Bible say about the importance of compassion and sensitivity towards the suffering of others? How can we guard our hearts against becoming indifferent or desensitized to the needs of those around us? That is a good question. How can we guard our hearts against becoming indifferent? And I think there's like this fine line, because if you remove yourself too far from it, you're going to be desensitized to it. But if you immerse yourself too much in it, you're going to be desensitized to certain things, not just diseases, but really anything in general. So there's that fine line of, I don't want to do it too much to where I'm desensitizing, and I don't want to do it so little that I kind of just forget about it and it's not a thing anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Something that pops to mind is like paramedics.
Mm-hmm.
And they see a lot of stuff.
Yep.
And so you've got people like paramedics who see people in terrible situations. That's something that they see a lot of. When you've got, on the flip side, some people who may have never seen like a compound fracture or something like that, take one look at it and pass out. So yeah, we need to be somewhere kind of in the middle.
Yep.
Not to the point where we're frozen with fear of whatever thing we've got to face, and not so desensitized to where it's just like, yeah, you know what, people die.
Yeah. Yeah. A paramedic is a great example for becoming desensitized to just any sort of like physical thing. And then it made me think that, if there's suffering going on like in a completely different country, terrible things happening, we're so removed from it, we're like, it's just happening. Like, I don't even think about it. So you need the middle is where you got to find that line of where that is for you, right? All right. And then limited focus was the last aspect that we talked about. In pandemic, the focus is primarily on containing the immediate crisis of disease outbreaks. How does this focus compare to the biblical perspective of considering eternal matters and the salvation of souls? Sort of mentioned that already, like pandemic is about a global crisis. Well, that relates to biblical perspective because we are in a global crisis of sin. So we should not lose that focus, I suppose. We should not limit our focus. When we go out and have faith in action and have compassion, we should not limit our focus to just disease or just poorness or just we're visiting someone in prison. We should keep our focus that, hey, there's a bigger thing that we're doing here, and that's sharing the gospel as well. What biblical principles remind us of the importance of maintaining an eternal perspective, even in the midst of temporal challenges? How can we prioritize sharing the hope of eternal life with others, even as we address immediate needs? So that's more of like an application thing, you know?
Yeah. We go through a lot in life. There will be times where you will feel like it is the lowest part of your life, and it may be. and we'll have those ups and downs our entire lives. We're going to go through really good times. We're going to go through really bad times. And the perspective we should have is we're children of God. These may be small battles, but the war has already been won. God has saved us on the cross. He took the burden of our sin upon himself. We are set free through him, through the blood of Christ. And anything that we're going through is temporary, and that's okay. It may not be comfortable, but it is temporary.
Yeah.
The war's won.
Yeah, and we share that with hope with the others that we're helping, ministering to their needs. We share that hope with them.
Yeah, that's the peace that surpasses all understanding. That's what that is whenever you can finally understand the true magnitude of what's been done for you through Christ. Nothing can touch you. There are things that can get you down, and of course we're still in our physical bodies and we still mess up. But in the end, it's done.
Yeah.
It's all done. It's all been written down. We see what's going to happen.
There's still death and disease.
Yep.
For now, but we have that hope that it's not going to be that way. So, those are some questions you can ask, some discussions you can have with people you're playing with. So, we want to hear from you guys. Do you guys like cooperative style games? Do you like games like Pandemic where you are a team playing against the game? Because I do.
I do too.
I like them quite a bit.
And if you like competitive games, that's fine too. I would be interested to hear what your favorite competitive ones are.
And like when I can be competitive against a game, I almost get more competitive.
Yeah.
like when I'm playing against other people, in the end, it's like, oh yeah, that was fun, even though I lost. When we're playing against a game, I don't have to feel as bad if I.
Right, you don't have to worry about the game's feelings.
Come on, game, what are you doing to me? So we want to hear from you guys. Let us know what are you guys currently playing?
Yeah. What
can we share with you about what you're currently playing and what you guys are doing now? So yeah. In looking at Pandemic for this chapter, it made me want to play it a lot more.
Yeah, same.
We were looking at it, and I was like, man, I kind of want to play this right now. I was like, let's just whip it out right now and play it, because it seemed it's been a while since I've played it, and I wanted to play it again. So we hope you guys will play it, enjoy it, and let us know how you feel about it. And Brad, we're on Chapter 8 already of Board Game Doctrine. Hard to believe. We've done 8 of these, and we're coming up on the end of Season 1.
Yep.
So we're planning on ending Season 1 just before Thanksgiving, which is coming up here in just a little bit.
Yeah.
And we're going to end with a special 2-part episode.
And it's going to need 2 parts.
2-part. So chapters 9 and 10 is going to be the end of Season 1. And guys, we're going to be tackling it, Season 1, Dungeons and Dragons. Big game in general. Big game for talking about Christianity and Christian aspects of Dungeons and Dragons. You know, it's got some hate over the years. It's got some love over the years. So we're gonna dive into Dungeons and Dragons, and we hope you guys will join us for the final 2-part chapter 9 and 10 of Board Game Doctrine, and we'll see you guys at that point. Come back and see us. Thanks.